2, 1.
Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Sisters Interview. My name is Ashaksi, and this is my sister, Saripkin.
Hi.
And this is our weekly interview series called the Sisters Interview. And tonight, we have as our guest, Duchess Angharad. She is a Lion of Antir, a member of the Order of the Pelican, and she has reigned in Antir 6 times over quite a long spread of time. The last time being with Duke Uther of the West. So welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're super excited. So we usually start these off by asking what your SCA origin story is, how you found the SCA, and what made you fall in love with it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd heard that there was a group out there that was into doing medieval stuff, and I could never find the SCA. I've been a medieval fanatic since I was a little kid. I loved the King Arthur stories, very into the Arthurian legends, and just history in general. I think I devoured as many history books and fiction, fact, whatever, nonfiction that I could. And then when I was in college at Evergreen State College in Olympia, I had picked up, I decided to start my own medieval fair. So I called it the Lusty Month of May Medieval Fair. I actually got funding from the college student organizations group to run my little thing that I was doing. I also ran a medieval film series. And so I started doing all this, and I read, I think it was Sunset Magazine, but there was an article about the SCA in it, and they had a contact name listed, and that was Mistress Serena. And so I contacted her and said, hey, I'm doing this medieval fair. Would any of your people be interested in coming down to it? And I think the first year, that was the second year I ran the fair. And so these 4 guys showed up in a car with their armor and stuff. And it was Torgal, Garen, Oweden, and Abdul. And I think it was just the 4 of them. And so they pulled out all their armor and this and that, and they put on a fighting demo. And then I got talking with them, and I'd already made myself, I had garb and the whole bit. And they're like, oh, you have to come join our group. And so I think it was a week or 2 later was the coronet tournament for the Principality of Antir. And so Abdul volunteered to drive me to the event. So he swung by and picked me up, and off we went to the event. And it was quite an experience, because I wore this Tudor outfit that I'd made with this big train and all this. I think I had one other outfit. And the tournament was held the first day on Saturday, and it was going on and on and on. And it started getting dark. And Duncan and Ulfred were going to be in the finals. And it started overnight. It poured. It just rained and rained. I had a river running through my little tent that I'd brought. And I'm sloshing around in the mud in this outfit. And, and then the next morning they held the tournament, and there was this patch of grass in the middle of this big puddle that had formed a little, lake kind of, and they finished up the tournament. And I as I recall, Duncan had quite a bit to drink that night and really didn't want to get hit very much. And Ulfred ended up winning the coronet tournament. But so interesting thing is we went to get ready to leave later in the day, and Abdul's car wouldn't start. And so all these guys are gathered around the car going, well, it could be this, it could be that, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I said, I think it's the distributor. And they're all like, no, we know it's blah. And I said, no, I think something's wrong with the distributor. And I grew up on a farm, and, so anyway, we had to wait for a tow truck the next day and all this. So these ladies down the road put us up at their house until we could get the car fixed the next day. Guess what it was? So anyway,
It was the distributor gap.
yeah. So anyway, I ended up going, oh my gosh, that was so much fun. And I was hooked. And people were like, I cannot believe you wanted to come back after all of that. And I said, oh, I had a blast, so that's how it all started. And I went home back to Olympia and started gathering up some people and started the incipient Shire of Everclear, which now is known as the Barony of Glamere, because they wouldn't let us register that name. We told them it was a pun on the weather, but
they had their doubts.
Yeah. Well, and our device, was the sun rays and the raindrops and such, and it kind of worked, but they still wouldn't let us go for it. So
Did you continue playing in that area?
yeah, until I graduated from college from Evergreen and left the area. And then I ended up moving back up north to Madrona area and got involved up there. I was part of the, helped out with the Madrona Culinary Guild and just, got involved in events up north. And then I've lived in Ontier, the West, Caid, and Glen Aubin.
Wow. Was there anyone in particular that was an early mentor for you in the SCA?
Oh yeah, Torgal. I mean, he, as y'all know, we started dating and he'd been playing for quite a long time. And so, I kind of, he wasn't a dupe back then or anything like that. So, I learned what I could from him. And then, Ulfred was a great, inspiration. Steingram, a lot of the people that kind of swept me up because within a year of joining the SCA, I was crown princess. And I really didn't know what that meant or, and so I was lucky that Foggy and Asha helped make garb for me. A lot of people took me under their wing and kind of helped out. But I mean, I was young and stupid and did, probably didn't do the best I could have back then. But if we only knew what we know now, then, but then again, who's ever been perfect their whole life?
I was going to ask how quick that was. I when I was looking through pictures to pull for this tonight, I noticed that you have a horse background. How did you find your niches in the SCA? Because you're also Thorne Squire, right?
Right. Well, interesting enough, when I first started in the SCA, there wasn't much equestrian happening at all. I grew up showing horses. As soon as I could walk, I learned how to ride a horse. And so I spent a lot of time on the show circuit, and so I was excited when later on it started really getting happening and got involved then. But I became Thorne Squire because he was teaching me how to fight, and I had a lot of really great inspirations, and he's such a good teacher. And I did pretty well as a fighter, but there were a few times where I just dropped out of the SCA for a little while to go do my modern life. And then I always got sucked back in again. And so it'd be, in and out and in and out. So, but yeah, Thorin really was a really, really good teacher for me. And I'm still a squire, but I really don't fight that much anymore. I have my armor and I've been known to pull it out a few times to play, but. And I don't even know if I answered your question.
Well, being thrown into reining after being in the SCA for such a short time.
That was my cat, sorry.
Oh, no problem. We understand animals.
I think they just destroyed something.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, did you have any background in retinue or anything like that?
Oh, no. I mean, my first year in the SCA was just kind of learning the ropes, getting, starting the Shire. I really kind of just jumped in with both feet. I tend to be an organizer and a doer. And I even, I did that as a kid. My parents had us volunteering and helping with things. I used to volunteer at the horse shows to help run things. So, I just kind of was used to doing that kind of stuff. But I don't think I was on any retinue in that first year. So it was more just kind of hanging out with the gang. I remember, being over at Steingram's house and, and hanging out with Olfred and, Monfred and, all the gang. And we just, so it got to a point where we were SCA and Modern Life was a blur. We all just kind of hung out together outside when we weren't at an event and at an event. But then all of a sudden, you're Crown Princess and it's like, what am I supposed to do now? And thank goodness there were a lot of people who had experience around, but you kind of also just have to learn it as you go.
And the first time you reigned, that was with Torgal?
Yes.
Did you come into the SCA with, you said that you made a Tudor costume. Did you have sewing knowledge already?
A little bit. My mother has kind of taught us a little bit of sewing, but then when I got to college, I got into theater, and I had a bit in high school too, but I got into theater quite a bit at Evergreen. And, so that means pitching in and learning how to help with everything. And I actually took a class where we were designing and making costumes. And so that's kind of where I started getting into doing that. I was like, oh, well, I really like this medieval stuff. I'm going to learn how to make these.
Very cool. And were there patterns available early on, or did you just kind of have to make it up and wing it as you went?
I think I used some books and then saw how they kind of drafted up some patterns, and then I kind of created my own based on what I saw. Because I think back then there wasn't the research ability that we have now, I have to admit, a few of my early dresses were shiny, and they were pretty,
yeah.
But they definitely wouldn't go over these days. But you do what you can with what you have, and you learn as you go.
I am always just so impressed by the work that people did then, because they just didn't have the resources that we have now. And I know that people like to make jokes about early SCA costumes, but they're kind of amazing. So
I remember having to send away for books to have them delivered, sent to the library there so I could do some research and such. And it's amazing when you can actually get your hands on, real stuff. I went to another interesting tidbit. To finish off my college education, I went to the Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies in Oxford for my last bit of study.
Wow.
My parents told me I could have either a used car or I could go to Oxford because I'd been begging to go. And they said, if you can get in, we'll pay for you to go. Because they had 4 kids and they didn't have a ton of money. So they were like, okay, if you can get in, it's that or a car. And I said, I'm going to Oxford. I said, I can get a car any day. But, so I got accepted. And so I went and spent a summer quarter at the Center for Medieval and Renaissance Studies in Oxford. And I still have it, my Bodleian library card. And you could go there and order up actual books from the 14th century or whatever. And they'd have them brought up from the bowels of the library and put them out on a desk for you. You go collect it, and you'd wear gloves, and you could, I was writing down notes and this and that. And you had to pick a course of study that you did while you were there. You were matched up with a professor who you did some research, and you had to write a paper and such. And then you would pick some courses that you took. Well, they also said that if you were so inclined, you could sit in on the other courses too. I went to every class that they offered practically because I was like, well, I'm here, I'm taking advantage of all of this. And my professor was very elderly lady who had lived during the war, and she was just so fascinating and amazing. And I actually picked doing medieval clothing as my research, and I stumbled on my research paper the other day. I found it and I'm like, oh, if I only knew then what I but I did get an A on it, which is like, she wrote on it, does not happen often. So she goes, you did really, so I was like real proud of it, so I had to keep it.
Of course. Awesome.
But while I was in England, I made a point of trying to get to a lot of things while I was in the area too. And Thorin actually had some friends that lived in York, a friend from here who had gotten married to somebody there. And so I went up and visited her, having never met her before. And she took me horseback riding. We went and rented horses, and we got to go galloping through the fields by Castle Howard and such. So I have to say, yeah, I've gotten to have some pretty good experiences.
Yeah, that sounds pretty magical. Wow.
Did you structure your courses at Evergreen to be medieval focused as well?
Yes. Well, see, when I went off to college, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I didn't know I just knew that I was expected to go to college. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I'm working on that. But the first year I was there, they actually had a full immersive course called Shakespeare in the Age of Elizabeth. So guess what I signed up for? So, so all your classes are around that theme. They might be, all these various aspects. And then the next year, I remember I was in a course called the Dark Ages, and that's when I met Adara, who was queen with Ulfred, and we were really good friends. And in our class, the teacher actually selected, one of us had to be Saladin and the other one Richard, the Coeur de Lion, and we had to go research our characters and then come to class and have a conversation as if we were them.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was really fascinating. So I really liked Evergreen in the way that, okay, so they don't have any requirements. You can study what you want to study from day one. They push you to think, to seminar, to learn how to figure things out without, if I had to sit in a class with 600 people with somebody lecturing at the front of it, I'd fall asleep or sneak out the back. I just wouldn't be able to do it. I need that engagement part of it, so.
I asked because you put together those medieval fairs at Evergreen, and I'm just wondering, what was your focus then, and did you carry your interest in a specific century or time period into the SCA?
It really wasn't from there. I mean, I was studying medieval stuff, and if they aren't offering a program you want to take, you can write your own. So I actually did a couple times write my own programs while I was there. And like I said, I did a lot of theater, I did a lot of history, liberal arts. I actually did a lot of event planning, and so I put on concerts there. That's how I met the Tannehill Weavers, and I still know them. I see them every time they come through town, or I've seen them in different cities too. I had them come play at Evergreen. So I had a number of, Celtic groups come and play, rock and roll groups. So I got really good at booking events, and so it's like I kind of just did what I felt like doing while I was there. And then so when I got out of college, I still wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I got into public relations work at first, and then I fell into the movie business.
Very cool. And those are all things that you sort of do in the SCA as well. Like,
yeah,
stay really true to those interests.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, becoming a Pelican to me is kind of like, well, it's what I do. I organize things. I like helping people out. I like training people. I like to say, hey, gang, let's all go put on a play, and and figure out how to make it happen. Even if you don't know how, you can figure it out, and kind of, and if you can get a lot of diverse people together and kind of figure out ways to make things happen, it makes it even better. So, and that's the cool thing about the SCA is that, you know, you meet a lot of people you might not otherwise ever met in your life, you know.
You had the honor of serving as queen, I think 4 times as Ontir was basically
Darn.
getting under its feet, right, as a kingdom. Are there anything that you brought in like that have become tradition or?
Oh goodness. Well, I have to admit, I'm one person who's never created an award or named one after myself or anything like that.
There's not an Angharad?
I'm still, yeah, I went, you know, if I'm ever queen again, I guess I better make up an award. I don't know. But you know, the funny thing is back in the day when I first started in the SCA, Ontir had knights, pelicans, laurels, a word of arms, goutte de song, and a jambe de lion. That's it. And, you know, it was like, I remember years later, oh, well, when I came back and reigned I hadn't been queen in a number of years and then had a big gap. And then I was queen again. And I looked at the list and went, what? Oh, I don't even know what all these are, you know, so it was kind of interesting for me to try and figure out what all the different words were and then try and say, okay, are we getting everybody covered and such like that. So, you know, but as far as, I don't know, I mean, you just kind of do what you do and hope that, you know, and sometimes you have to do things that maybe you personally wouldn't want to do, but it's for the good of the kingdom. And, you know, and sometimes people don't understand that and it's hard. And it's that whole thing of, well, I can't always tell everybody the whole story, but there's a reason. And, you know, what do you do? There are just things throughout the years that it's like, well, I wish we didn't have to make this decision, or I wish we didn't have to do it this way, but, you know, it's the way things have to be, you know. So I just think that's one of the big things. If you're going to be royalty, you have to realize it's for a greater good. It's not about you. It never is. And so, you know, I think that's one of the things too, is you learn a few times, you know, early on, you're just trying to get your feet under you and figure it out and such. And then when you have the opportunity to do it more times, it's like, okay, what can I do now to really help drive things and make this a good experience for other people? I mean, there's mornings where you just don't even want to get out of bed and they're waiting for you to be in court, and you get your butt up and you dress nice and you go out there and you put a smile on and you do it because that's what you're there to do.
Rowena DeManning says that she remembers you being one of the first people to get their retinue in coordinating garb.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess that is something, because yeah, early on, I think, well, yeah, Thorne and my first reign, we had the entire retinue in black and white. And then we did that again in other reigns. So yeah, we did the whole Persian thing the one time, and I was carried in on a big chair, and all my retinue was in peacock colors. So yeah, we always tried to do kind of a theme. And then there were times we'd say, well, we just want you to do this color, but do what you want. We did, oh yeah, we had all the girls in white bleos, my third reign. So it was just kind of fun, and everybody had a good time with it. I never want to make somebody wear something they're just not going to feel good in or comfortable. So you want to kind of make sure that you're picking something that works for everybody, or give them that leeway to say, here's the color scheme we want to do, but do what you like, you know.
It's good team building.
Yeah.
It's really good team building. The other thing that you that I know you for is how active you are in the Ladies of the Rose, and I should say the Order of the Rose now.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you've done through that group that you're particularly proud of, or that have brought you joy?
I think the biggest thing is the Writerless horse ceremony. I have to get, the credit goes to Dagmar and Kyrie, I believe, were the people who came up with the idea for it. But I've been really proud to be able to be involved with it and got to be the first, lead the horse for the very first ceremony, right before our coronation happened with Luther. And luckily at the time I had this big black perch on, Maximus, and he was really appropriate for that. But it's a solemn event and it means a lot to people. And I get contacted all the time with people asking me to please add their loved one to the list and make sure. And, it's really hard right now because we haven't been able to get together and do that ceremony. And we've unfortunately lost a lot of people on the time we've been on lockdown. But I want everyone to know that we have not forgotten and the list is being kept. And as soon as we're able to gather again, we will be doing the ceremony again, because it means a lot to this kingdom and to the people we've lost over the years. Whether we knew them well or not, it doesn't matter. They're what make up this kingdom and make us who we are. And we just don't want to forget anyone. So yeah, we're continuing to do that. And then
for people
also,
not from Ontario, can you describe what the ceremony looks like?
Yeah, apologies. It's kind of based on, well, I think people have seen the modern day riderless horse where in a parade or a ceremony they'll bring in, but we bring in a horse that has no rider on it. And we have the Order of the Rose, has put together the old champion's cloak and turned it into a barding for the riderless horse. And it was a great way to not just get rid of a piece of our history. So, and then what happens is the horse is led into court escorted by all the former consorts of the Principality Kingdom, and then the queen is given tassels and the name of each person who has passed in the year since the last ceremony. Their name is read off, and for each name a tassel is added to the barding to commemorate that life. And so, and we try and use different horses from our equestrian community to be involved in the ceremony. So it's something that we do it every September at September Crown, because we usually hold our equestrian championship there. And so this is a place for us to remember those people that helped build Ontario and that we've lost over that time.
I just pulled up 2 of the
Yes.
pictures that I found. So it's very cool, and it's very meaningful ceremony.
Yeah.
I love that the Order of the Rose took that on and have run with it.
Yeah. And it's unique to our kingdom. That no other kingdom does this. So
yeah,
I think it's pretty awesome.
So that's just something that I think the order is really proud of, and staying involved. I mean, it's a good way for the people who have helped reign in this kingdom previously to bring something to the kingdom and continue to be of service.
Yeah, for sure. Do we want to look at the rest of the photos?
Yeah, let me get back to the beginning. Okay.
I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there's some good ones. All right, can we see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's from our first reign with Torgal and I, and that's well, at the time, Sir Seamus de Roche, who is now Duke Thorin, he changed his name, and he was the kingdom champion, and that cloak he's wearing there is the one that has become the barding for the riderless horse ceremony.
Very cool.
And that's Torgal and my, that was our coronation of our successors was later that day. That would have been Ulfr and Nadara. Yeah.
Are those the crowns? No, they're not. Those are like the saw crowns.
Oh yeah, those are the early ones. I had to be careful when I hugged people with those because they had really sharp points. You could, you know, really do some harm with them. And we have no clue what happened to them. So if anybody out there knows where the original crowns of Antir disappeared to, or you have them in your closet, we'd love to find them.
No questions asked.
Right. Leave them on my doorstep. I don't know. Orontius has been great in keeping a collection of, collecting up a lot of the old pieces of the kingdom regalia. There's Torgal and I.
Wow.
So there's a lot of, well, not a lot of pictures of you, but more than one that where you have flower garlands in your hair. Was that a thing back then, or?
Yeah, kind of, you know, early SCA days and just, you know, hanging out. You might, you know, or people would give them to you as like gifts or something, you know.
Sweet.
Oh, that was our Conan the Barbarian cat. Oh, sorry, my cat's just about took out my camera here.
It happened. My cat flung my computer across the room during an interview once. So.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
So we were having a little, I don't even think it was a demo. It was more like we just had a fighting practice up at the stone circles that are up in Bellingham at Fairhaven. And there are these two big circles with stone circles, and we were kind of messing around. And so Torgal and Arius and I are Conan the Barbarian.
Did you meet Arius in the SCA, or did you bring her in? Or
no, she'd already been in the SCA. I met her through Thorin and through doing Camlin Fair. She and her ex-husband actually kind of started Camlin Fair. And but yeah, we got Thorin was a part owner at the time, and so we got involved in helping set it up and run it and do things at it, and that's how we met, and we've been friends ever since.
So cool.
Oh, 20 year.
Yeah, I thought this might be 20 year.
You might recognize a couple of youngsters there.
Okay, you're gonna have to give us some names.
Okay.
I see a Jade.
Tell who's on the end there, but there's Kathan and myself in the middle, and Jade and Arius.
Wow.
And then I think that was like pack up day because you were half in modern clothing, and Kathan's still in his outfit. He's wearing a baldric for my being on my guard.
Were you queen at 20th year?
No, I was a Duchess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So every time I talk to someone who went to 20th year, I have to know what their favorite stories were, because people have told the most amazing stories about 20th year. So what's your favorite 20th year story?
Well, you probably already heard about the stupid Norse pet tricks and Christian smashing the can. I mean, the people were just appalled at some of the stuff we were doing. But okay, so this story probably hasn't been told, but I think it was Atenvelt's tent. I don't remember. We were in somebody's pavilion, the big, huge pavilion, and there was a party, and we were like hanging from the rafters and climbing. And I think that's the event where, was it Eric? Somebody climbed one of the center poles or something, and everybody was like, get down, you're gonna pull down the whole tent. But I know later in the evening we were all drinking a lot. I mean, that happened at 20 year. And at one point people were jumping from throne to throne or something, and I think one of the thrones might have gotten broken, and everybody went, run! And yeah, there was a lot of partying. Pretty much what 20th year was is stay up all night partying and drinking and playing stupid games, and then you'd sleep in And the next morning you'd get up and we'd all do it again. The rain there was crazy. It was super humid, and you'd get this torrential downpour and it would turn everything into this red mud. So they started having mud wrestling matches in the middle of this big mud puddle that had gotten created. So you just saw people with their garb hanging off of them, covered in red mud. They were out there flinging it at each other. And then it would get so hot that it would just suck all the water out of everything. And your garb would just, the bottoms of our garb was just covered with this red clay. And yeah, it was like, but nobody cared. There was lots of fun to be had at that event. Met lots of really amazing people from all these different kingdoms. Another memorable thing was, and I think it got touched on, is James and Farina had their daughter at that event. Farina's doctor told her she was fine to come to the event. She was very pregnant, but she wasn't due yet. So they said, okay, yeah, you can go. So they went, and I know she was not super comfortable in the heat and all that. Well, then she started going into labor. So they raced her to the hospital, and she came back later with her baby in arms. And I'm just like, I couldn't believe it. I mean,
Wow.
she was queen at the time. And I know she was exhausted, and what a trooper.
Wow.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing. I don't think,
Yeah.
I think I would have been like, I'm out.
Yeah, going home now. Yeah. But yeah, they were playing, I don't know if other people watched some of the other story, but I mean, they were playing, what Antir had was the stupid Norse pet tricks, which is, it'd be like Torgal and Dak grabbing arms with their swords in each other's bellies, pulling until somebody said, let go or something. I know that there's been points where a little blood was drawn, or and then they do this thing where they fall on an axe. So the axe blade up, and then you fall and catch yourself before you impale yourself on the axe. And I think maybe Eric told the story or something about how Christian wanted to do it, but was very inebriated. And so they put a beer can down and said, if you can if you can stop yourself from crushing the beer can, then you can do the axe. And yes, she wasn't successful. Thank goodness they didn't put the axe down for her. Yeah, there was some really fun and silly, and it's the whole thing of, like, as kids, nowadays you have to wear a helmet and you have to do this and you have to do that. I mean, a lot of us are lucky we're all still alive.
For sure. For sure.
And that looks like in court with Eric and Melissa sitting on the thrones.
Looks like you're a crown princess, maybe.
Yeah.
And you've got Torgal and Catherine standing behind you. Is that right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm doing this off my phone because
I know, I'm sorry.
I'm trying to make up a little picture. Yeah, that was in the early days.
Very cool.
Oh, so Cathan was on my Queen's Guard. This was my third reign, and I'd met him at 20 years, so I put him on my guard. So he flew up to, be at coronation, and poor thing, he got, ended up in a tent full of women. You can tell he's hating every moment of it.
Every moment.
Yeah. And there's unfortunately, some people we don't have with us anymore in that picture, and some dear friends, and it's always nice to see them. And that was at a crown tournament that Thorne was fighting in. And there's Arius with me.
Oh,
Oh, and that's the that was the rain. We were stepping down at this event, and I think I gave Thorin a forget me not, and it was we were in these really hot outfits, and it was so hot out, and we were out in this field, and it was just getting hotter and hotter, and everybody was dying, and I finally, we looked at each other and said, to the woods, and we made we had our retinue pick up the thrones, and we moved the entire court into the woods, and oh, it was so much nicer. So yeah, Gunnar and Gabrielle followed us. Were crowned at this event.
Do you remember who did you sew that costume, or did someone sew that for you? That's really beautiful.
Kat actually, and there was, I think, a few different people who were involved in making that outfit, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah. I was wondering if it was Kat's work.
Yeah. She's got the coat, the overcoat. When I decided to quit the SCA, one of the times I quit, I gave it to her to, because I was just like, here, you should have this back. I actually still have the rest of the outfit, so I do wear it occasionally.
That's awesome. I bet that makes her really happy.
Yeah. Oh, it's a beautiful outfit.
Those sleeves are incredible.
Yeah.
These aren't in order. I did my best,
That's all right. But yeah, this was this was way up in Red Deer. We had to drive up there. I think it took us an entire day overnight to drive up there for our coronation. And this is some of my guard, my great guys who made it up there with me. Oak, of course, on the far left. And then Cedric Lion Archer, who was Steingram's squire, who is now an Academy Award winning visual effects supervisor, and animation he actually does. You'll know him from The Mandalorian. And
oh, is that Hal?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, Hal and Oak, and I think that's Rolf on the far other end. Mm-hmm. Those guys have been with me for forever and ever. They were my, trusty guys that always were there for me, and always have soft spot in my heart for all of them.
Wow.
Oh, and you'll see him there again in the background. Hal's back there with their Steingram. We're all having a good laugh over something. That was from my first reign. And that's me talking to Sir Wilhelm von Westphalen, who earlier was known as Pickrate of Anlin. He was Black Lion Herald, and unfortunately we lost him this last year. But yeah, he's another one that always was right there for us, helping out, and great herald, and dry sense of humor, funny as heck.
And he was one of Thorin's squires, right?
Yeah. And then eventually got knighted, and yeah.
In
fact, I did his knighting scroll for him.
Oh, I didn't know you did scribble. That's really cool.
I did back in the day. I haven't done it recently, but yeah, in the early days when Gerhard Kendall was running the College of Scribes, I did a number of scrolls for people. And that's after having won the crown when Eric and Melissa were king and queen, and getting handed the book of knowledge. This was back before we had the internet. And each of the queens would write letters to the other queens giving them tidbits of information about what you should know, and what they've run into, and then that book also held like all the ceremonies, and yeah, great book of knowledge.
Did you get that book your last reign with Uther, or had it gone
No,
by then?
I don't think so. I think by now it's all online.
That's kind of, I think the book is kind of cool. I I kind of wish that there was still sort of a book where at least, you know, the queens could write each other notes or whatever.
Yeah, it might be floating around out there. I'm not sure.
The last
Been a
time
few
I
years.
saw it, I think was like 20 years ago. So I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, this was, I think this was a sea lion event, maybe. Anyway, this was an event where Thorin actually decided not to fight that day because he didn't want to pick sides or something. And I said, I'm fighting. So I put on my armor and I'm sitting up there on the throne and I kept going, can we fight now? Can we fight now? Is court over? Can we fight now? And he goes, be quiet or I'm going to put you in the tower. I am related to Eleanor of Aquitaine, so there you go. Yeah, we always had fun with that. Yep, and that's up in Canada when way up in Red Deer when we had our coronation up there. You see one of my ladies wearing one of their white bleo from one of the earlier reigns.
Nice.
Always been a big fan of bleos.
I think this is you in armor.
Yeah, probably could be. Sorry, I'm trying to like see. Oh yeah, that's me right there. Yeah, next to Thorin.
Why did you decide to try fighting? Like what appealed to you about it?
Oh, I was a tomboy. I mean, I grew up on a farm, like I said. I used to huck bales of hay and carry 100-pound sacks of grain into the barn and, you know, things like that. So it really appealed to me watching everybody fight. And I went, and I remember Thorin's squire Frederick, his wife Delaney, was fighting. And so I said, and that was at an Eggles, I think it was. And I said, can I borrow your armor? And she's like, yeah. So they armored me up. And I have this great picture somewhere of me with Grendel. And I'm like, he's towering over me and I'm in armor. I'm looking up at him. And I'm like, oh my goodness. But yeah, I picked it up fairly well and, you know, started playing and fighting. And then as I got training, got better. And I went and fought. I've spotted Estrella at Great Western War, at Pennsic, at Lily's War. The wars always I thought were fun. I fought in tournaments here and there too. I remember when I moved out to Glen Aubin, I didn't immediately get involved with the SCA. And then I started kind of putting my toe in the water there. And I was in this tiny little incipient shire there, met some really amazing people. Well, I went to Lily's. No, it was a different event. It was some event there. And I took my armor along and I just started fighting again. And so I turned up and said, hey, I need to get qualified here. I have a card from Ontario, but I'm not qualified here. And I just met the Crown Prince and he was like, oh, if you don't mind, I'll qualify you. And I said, okay. So we started fighting and we did some slow work. And then, you know, we did a little more fighting. And then, you know, he got me. And then, you know, Thorin taught me well. We were fighting away, fighting. And all of a sudden, I saw an opening, I opened up and wham, right down the front of his helm. And he was like, whoa, that was great. Did you guys see that? And so that was fun. So he goes, yep, you're qualified. But I'm like, yep, I learned that from my knight. And then I remember doing a demo out there for Boy Scouts and having to fight this guy who was like Grendel size. He had a pole weapon. And we were doing this big demo for the Boy Scouts. And I don't think they saw me. I think we got an armor out a way back. But anyway, so I'm lined up against this guy and I'm like going, oh, I can't let him stand back and poke at me or I'm dead. You know, so they, you know, they're setting up the whole scene. And then he goes, okay, lay on. And I just let out a scream and went racing in on him and jumped up in the air and wham, and he fell over. And all the little kids were like, "Woo, yay!" And then later they were like, when I pulled my helm off, they're like, "It's a girl." And those are always kind of the fun ones, you know, to do. But yeah, so I mean, I just did it for fun because I enjoyed it. Skeggy and Thorne used to tell me if I'd stuck with it, I probably could have gotten knighted. But, to me, it was more about, yeah, but there were times when in my modern life, I had to kind of go do that for a while. And then I came back and, you do what you do when you do it.
And there's room for people playing at every level that they want to play at. You don't have to be on a peerage path, and that's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Just enjoy what you're doing.
Love it. And yeah, and when I just, I was just a couple years ago, Baroness of Aquaterra, and, a couple times I got armored up and went out and fought leading my troops. And I mean, I had some of them think that I was just somebody who put on some armor to look, and stand back and let them do the fighting. And when I was in the front line in the shield wall and fighting, they were like, oh my gosh, you actually fight. Like, yeah,
I actually do.
I do.
Prepare to die.
Oh, that's with Siegfried. I don't know if old timers will remember him from, he was married to Melissa Kendall.
Yeah.
He was one of our constables, and yeah, that's an old picture. That's from, I think a demo we did in Ocean Shores. I think that's one of the ones I just recently posted.
Yeah, there's a couple of newspaper pictures.
Do a lot of demos, and they were always fun. Yeah, that was all of that armor I'm wearing right there is borrowed. I remember my first shield was a center grip. It was the round, strapped around. I eventually moved to a center grip round. Skeggy made me a gorgeous one that I still have to this day. And yeah, people were always surprised that I was fighting with a center grip round, but because I was strong enough to hold one and use it and learned how to use it, I actually loved fighting with it.
It's a great picture of you and Thorin.
Oh, and that's really early on. See, that's one of my shiny dresses. I think that's like, my first year in the SCA.
Yeah, you can't tell it's shiny in the picture.
I know, but
You've got a hat on. I mean, that's for 1982. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we were all, you kind of make an effort and, you do what you think looks right.
Cool.
And I would never give anybody, even to this day, a bad time about what they're wearing. Everybody starts somewhere. Yep. And you encourage them and you go, hey, that's a great start. If you ever want to learn some more, I'm happy to help you out. And
if it's not somebody's thing to dress fancy, that's totally cool too. I don't care if you've been playing 15 years and you're still wearing a T-tunic and, pajama pants or whatever you can have fun in is all good.
Sorry, my cat's playing with the cords. Oh yeah, and that one just got recently posted. That's one of our early reigns.
The Black Rain.
Yeah. Yeah, I have that long black Leo on, and yeah. Thorne and I both liked wearing black.
Is that Torquil?
Yeah, it looks like.
Yeah, yep. He was the champion.
And then Alfred never mind.
I think that might be too small, but I kind of looks like Max to me, but I could be wrong.
Oh, I think Max is in the background.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's a big scroll.
Yeah. There's some, even back, over the years, I've just seen some amazing scroll work that people have done. It just blows me away.
I love that they're putting all of those in an archive online so people can look at them, because it's one of those things where they put in countless hours and you see it like briefly, if at all. And they're just really unsung heroes, I think, the scribbles.
And what's funny is, back in the day, in the early days, we had Xeroxed promissories that, sometimes were painted in or not. And I have a promissory that I was given. I think it's for my Goethe song. or Jean, one of them, that is, my name's written in and the date's written in with a green Sharpie.
Awesome. Awesome.
And it's like, I'm never getting rid of that. I love it, you know?
One of the really cool projects that people are doing during the pandemic is getting to all of those backlog scrolls.
Yeah.
And following through on all those promissories. It's been pretty epic.
It really
There's beautiful ones being done, and it's really nice. Particularly people, when I saw the backlog list, there were people who don't play anymore, but I'm still in touch with, and I got in touch with them and it was like, hey, they're looking for you, and you know, if you'd like to. And one of them was like a Whedon who doesn't play anymore, but we're Facebook friends. And so I said he had never gotten his knighting scroll, I think it was. And he said, you know what, I would love to have one. So he's getting one made.
That's awesome.
very cool. Very cool.
Oh, and that's Uther down. Oh yeah, I flew down to the West Kingdom. He was stepping down from his first reign. I think it was stepping down from one of his reigns.
I think this might be his ducal. I think I remember.
Yeah, and I was carrying his, he asked me to carry his cornet in for him. And there's I think the tunic he was wearing earlier in the day, I hand embroidered all this knot work and stuff all over it and stuff. And I'd gone to England for Christmas to visit a friend who lived in the Cotswolds, and he had asked me, he's like, I don't have anything to wear for stepping down, blah blah blah, the person who's supposed to make something, can you make me something? And I'm like, okay. So I'm on an airplane stitching away like crazy, you know, trying to put this tunic, you know, all this embroidery on this tunic. And I spent my entire trip there, anytime we were just hanging out or whatever, embroidering like crazy. And then on the flight home, and then got the tunic put together for him to wear.
So I know you've lived in a whole bunch of different kingdoms, and obviously you've reigned a bunch and traveled a bunch, but you seem to have a really great network of people that you know in a whole bunch of different kingdoms. How did you cultivate that?
Well, I just love meeting people and I love getting involved. And so a group of us, I think there was about 5 of us ladies, flew down to Trimaris because they had this event called the Tournament of the, what was it? The Wolf Moon. And it was the Company of the Rose that they had started down there was doing this event, which was all equestrian and rapier. And for all the ladies were sponsoring people in the tournaments, and they were having all this fun. So we got, I think Dawn Wenna had gotten invited down because she knew Duchess Elspeth, who lived down there, said, we should go. Well, I was queen at the time, so I was like, yeah, let's go. So a whole group of us flew down there, rented this tree house that we stayed in. It was so cool, and competed in the tournament and got to meet a bunch of people. And I've been friends with Duchess Elspeth ever since. We're like sisters. We contact each other all the time. I met Mistress Hirokin down there, who's actually my Laurel. I flew down there again another time. I don't think I wasn't queen at the time, but I flew down and helped for their arts and sciences competition, and actually got invited to help judge some of the competitions. And they had a contest for, you know, gift bags. And so I made a couple of Ontarian haversack bags, and I was finishing up the embroidery on the trip down, and I got them, you know, it all, you know, finished up, and it's with the bag. You know, they had big handles and the different colors, and I'd embroidered on it. And I actually ended up winning the competition for that because the king and queen actually looked at them and said, we're keeping these. And I said, yes, your majesties, whatever you'd like to do with them, they're yours. But I think our haversacks are well known around the known world, but
Ontario does really good largesse.
Oh yeah. In fact, I helped coordinate some relief efforts for Glen Aubin when after the hurricane. I was gonna go down for their coronation and then it got canceled because all their stuff got ruined and, so then they postponed it. And in the meantime, I helped collect gift cards and donations and things to take down. So I took an entire duffel bag with me full of donations when I did go down and sent some ahead, shipped them ahead. And but some people were very generous with donations that they had. And so when I was going up in court to give, them gifts, I heard one king lean over the other and go, "Antir gives the best gifts ever." So that was fun. But yeah, I've been to Gulf Wars. I actually went out to Gulf Wars because of some people I'd met, and we had a grand time out there. And some people put me up. I don't even think I wasn't queen at the time, but I'd met some folks. Gosh, I think when I was in Glen Aubin, they put me up there, and I brought a couple of friends. I said, "You guys, because it's when I went to the coronation." Sorry, I'm jumping around. In Glen Aubin, they said, "You have to come to Gulf Wars." And I said, "Well, are you still going to have it?" And they said, "We have to. Our people need us to do it." And I'm like, "Okay." So I went home and said, "Okay, look, you guys, we have to go to Gulf Wars." So there was about 6 of us who flew down together, got put up, had a wonderful time. So then I came back and said, "Everybody, we have to go to Gulf Wars. Gulf Wars is the best." And then little by little, more and more people from Ontario started going to Gulf Wars, and now it's a thing. But the hospitality out there is amazing. Everybody's so much fun. So all these events I go to, I end up meeting people. And I actually had kind of this group called my household kind of thing called Windhorse Manor. And I was collecting people into this household from all over the known world. We all showed up at Gulf Wars, and there's pictures you probably have seen out there. I've got the Windhorse Manor banner flying, and there's people from all these different kingdoms all hanging out and partying together because we all just kind of collected each other and had a great time.
Very cool.
And this is at Penzic, I believe. Yeah. I've only been to Penzic twice, and both times I was queen. It was great.
That's the way to go.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the last time we went, oh boy, we had a drinking game we played with one of the other kings, and finally his retinue came and took him away because he was so drunk. And we basically, when we then looked around, we were like, only Ontarians were still left at the table. And then we declared victory.
This is a pretty big Ontario contingent for Penzic.
It really is.
Yeah, we had quite a turnout that year, and it was a lot of fun. I think, yeah. Oh, there's Melissa and Lauren and I. Oh, and this is the court in the woods when we moved out of the middle of the big open field and into looks like though the shade was starting to disappear, but.
Wow, Thorne's boots are even white.
Uh-huh.
Nice.
Hanging out. It's like I'm playing with a phone or something. Oh, and this is where I was becoming Thorne Squire. And it was at I believe it was a Glenmere feast. Yeah.
Is that Lao?
It might be Hufiga.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, is this the one where Bran's getting knighted? Could
I
be.
don't know. It
Yeah.
looks like Torquil and Ludwig, and you and Thorne are crown prince and princess. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, James and Arius and I, okay, so we used to drive down to the West Kingdom all the time when we were part of the West, and also even after we weren't anymore. We take the Dun Cow Inn, down to West Kingdom events and hang out and have fun with everybody.
Can you tell us about the Dun Cow Inn? Because we've in a couple of interviews we've touched on it briefly, but I think that you're the only person that we've interviewed that actually has had a hand in running it.
Yeah, it was this gargantuan. I mean, I don't even know how big. It's like take 5 of those carport things and put it together. It took like half a day to put the thing up. And then what would happen is Robert and Duncan McFlandry ran it, and they would cook. You could buy into the Dun Cow Inn, and you could either just buy all your meals for the weekend, or you could rent a room. They actually had blocked off rooms, and you could rent a room and meals for the weekend. And it was always packed, and every night that was party central. And so there was dancing, and there was singing, and there was drinking, and there was I remember there was Steingram dancing on the table with Serena, at a Dun Cow Inn. We just all used to have just a grand time in the Dun Cow Inn. It was, people would always ask, is the Dun Cow Inn coming to the event? It's just that it was so took so much time to put up, then take down, pack up, but it was just kind of became the place to hang. So it people would see it as pulling in with it, the big trailer and everything, and they'd run over and start helping. So that made it a lot easier.
Oh yeah.
Because it took a lot of hands to get that thing up.
Yeah. And somebody had to have a vehicle to pull a trailer and a trailer to haul all the stuff.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. It's a huge service.
I remember a lot of early events, groups of us packing into Lynn the Far Rover had this old yellow vintage truck thing enclosed that then she pulled a trailer behind. So we'd pack the trailer, and then there was a bed in the back and stuff was all underneath it. So a couple people would have to lay on this bed platform thing, and then 3 of us would be in the front seat on this bench seat, and we'd take turns driving, so we never had to stop except for food and gas, and to go to West Kingdom events. And it'd be like, okay, we're going, and it'd be packed full of camping gear and armor. Pretty much that was it. And
over Grants Pass.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't believe how many times we just did that whole trek down to the West Kingdom and back. So it was just, but we did it. You just didn't even think twice about it. And we'd all pool what money we had, none of us had a whole lot of money back then, but you did, and then you'd buy, bread, cheese, and beer, and then make it through the weekend. Leftover pizza, whatever you could get.
Should I share again?
Sure. I just wanted to get that question in because we haven't had anybody really talk about it before. And I think it's an iconic Ontarian thing.
In fact, we probably had it at this event. James was king of the West at the time. I think Jade was his squire still. He hadn't reigned yet. And yeah, we'd gone down to visit. Arius and I did a couple of road trips down there too, just to visit on a few occasions.
And is that all armor that James had made that's sitting in
Yeah. In fact, the helm I have that I fought in for years is one of James's helms he gave me as a coronation gift one of my reigns.
Wow.
Very cool.
And Darius and I, Siegfried, we met him at 20 year. We met lots of fun people at 20 year. But yeah, people used to see Arius and I and go, is Hart in town? You guys are really getting Nancy Wilson, aren't you? Things like that. We were like, yeah, that's it. And with Oak. I think we gave Oak his name of Oak, but then they wouldn't let him register it, so he had to register, a different name. But he'll always be Oak to us.
Is there a story behind Oak?
Just because he's a big, strapping boy, and he reminded us of an oak tree, and it seemed to fit, and it stuck.
has definitely stuck.
Yeah. It's like there's other people that have, you know, names that they couldn't register, but they'll always have because it just is them. Oh, and that's that same event that we saw with James. That's Jade in her early days. So I'm going to plug in my phone because my phone's going to run out of power here in a minute. There's an oops. I just turned off my light now.
We lost her.
Can you guys hang on a minute?
Yeah, no problem.
Bye.
I'm going to reset things here.
No worries.
That's if I can find myself. I'm in the dark. And my cats ran off with my stuff. And
I think your cats have thumbs.
They do. So what did they do here? Oh my goodness.
That must be 20th year.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, I see what happened. Now if I can find the cord, I'll plug it back in. And
Duke Flea said, "Oh my God, I think that's Jade in the orange." Yes, Your Grace, that's Jade.
Jade.
Oh, that is Jade.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on my Queen's Guard too. We got to be friends, and I ended up if you had one of the old pictures from, now if I can find the end of my cord, I'll plug my light back in. There's some pictures like of some of my old retinues that they're like the you know, who's who of who later became, you know, counts, dukes, knights.
Yeah, the people that took the time to take photographs and really document the history of Antir, I have a debt of gratitude to them. It's so fascinating to look back and see it, and if they hadn't done that, then it would just be lost.
Aha, I found, I think, the end of my cord. Sorry, everyone. Technical difficulties.
Tell a mom joke, Ashaxi.
Yeah.
Not to be put on the spot or anything.
Right.
That's Octopus Sade's department, the dad jokes.
Oh, there we go.
Let me tone this down.
You're a mom, you tell a mom joke.
Oh God.
Yeah, if my iPad had worked like it was supposed to today, it would have been fine. But then I had to suddenly grab my phone, which wasn't charged up, and yada yada. Anyway, here we are.
We're back.
All right.
Looking gorgeous. Here we go.
Here we go.
There. Yeah, and I was like trying to figure out my lights and I don't get on Zoom a lot, but.
So I think this is 20th year. It's Melissa and Eric.
Yeah, it's the giant pavilion they had at 20 year.
Cool. I think they're
You'll see me.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was enormous. And just packed full of people who'd come from all over the known world. And I mean, this is early on in the SCA days. Now I haven't been around as long as Thorin has, you know, he started way back when, and so did James, you know, so.
This is a huge Antir contingent though.
Yeah, we had quite a few people who went down to this event. It was amazing.
Duke Eric says he would still be wearing his first brown tunic if it wasn't for you and Arya.
Well, and Skeggy's always telling the story. He goes, yeah, I always have to tell people this story about how, you know, he used to show up at fighting practice in Madrona, and he was kind of a skateboard guy and kind of, and he had one outfit and one pair of pants. He fought in them. He wore them for a garb. They were just a mess. And so I walked up to him, and I think I was queen at the time, and I said, is that all the garb you have? And he said he felt this big. Yes. And I said, oh, honey, okay, I'm getting your measurements. I'm going to make you some garb. And I went home and made him some tunics and some pants and stuff. And he was just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much.
And you made a forever friend.
Yeah. He's one of my best buds.
Very cool.
So you and Duchess Alina.
Yeah. And that was at that event that it was Uther's stepping down when he became Duke. Oh, Thorne and his girls.
I just love this picture of you all.
Adriana is on the left, and she's also his squire, and then Dagmar on the other side.
Thorne and his women.
Yep. Happy as a clam.
We miss you, Your Grace.
Yeah. Do. I send him notes every once in a while. Go, are you still alive? And that was, oh yeah, that was at our coronation. Uther and I, we were the gold and silver. We were being the sun and the moon.
Oh, cool.
So when you reigned with Uther, you hadn't reigned in a while.
Yeah, it was like 17 years or something. I don't know. It was a long time.
When he asked you to be his consort, was that sort of an immediate yes? Because I mean, Uther's entering crown. He's probably going to win.
Yeah, I was.
You had to think about.
Yeah, no, it was like I went. It's been a long time, and sure, and we're friends. I mean, we've been friends for quite a while. We actually were housemates down in the Bay Area for a while, and got to know his family really well. And yeah, I mean, when he said that he wanted to do this and that, I said, well, yeah, if you can get permission to do it, because he was told he could fight in crown as long as he fought for somebody who lived here in Ontario. And he's like, well, that's a no-brainer. So, and then we kind of between us decided that, and he made a commitment. He said, I will be in the kingdom. I think it was at least 2 weekends a month to go to events, which is a big commitment when you live in another kingdom. And he probably did even more than that. And there were a lot of times where we split up, like he'd do the south part of the kingdom just because it was closer to him, and I'd go north. And then there were other times we'd meet up somewhere, or he'd fly up here and we'd go together somewhere. We went a lot of places. In fact, we went up to Prince George, which meant that we had to go up to Vancouver, get on a plane, and fly up there. And because we were going up there and they'd never had royalty there, the Prince and Princess of Thierry and the Prince and Princess of Avicall decided to go too. So they got descended upon by all this royalty. And I mean, it was so much fun. We had such a blast up there, and the people were so wonderful. And yeah, it was a great time. So we really made a point of trying to get out and about and be as many places as we could. And
It's the best summer ever.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we even had a tagline. I still have some of the little tokens that things that said that on it.
Oh, there it is.
Yep.
Yeah. And people would yell that. We'd get into court and Uther'd go, and what is it? And everybody yelled, the best summer ever. And it just became a thing, and we had such a good time. And I remember at the Crown tournament we held to pick our successors, Stormcrow hadn't played in a while, but he still had his Viking ships that he built. So I called him up and said, would you bring one of the ships up to the event, and so we could hang out in it and stuff. And he's like, of course, Your Majesty. And I'm like, so, if I asked, he'd always take us sailing or whatever. So he brought this ship up to the Crown event site, which was in Arlington, he brought it on a trailer. and parked it there. And then we put some chairs up there, and we were able to sit up there, stand up there, watching the lists. We could see the entire Crown list field from up there, and we'd watch it sometimes from there, or walk around and watch it. But yeah, it was a great time, and people really loved it. The other thing that we did is, because, you know, we usually would raise money for the Raven Travel Fund. And so that night, Uther challenged the 3 children, so the 3 principalities, to bring their best libations, and we set up a tavern on the Erics, where each principality had a spot where they would serve up their best libations that they brought, and people could get coins at the gate, and then they could vote with who they thought was best. And then we also did an auction. And so we'd been given a bunch of things to auction off, and we'd gotten things. And so we had this giant party on the Eric where we had alcohol flowing all over the place. We were doing these auctions to raise money. The people had to buy the coins for voting and buying drinks. So that money went into the travel fund. And we heard another party happening up the road. So I ran up there and said, hey, you guys, the biggest party is happening down on the Eric. You need to come. And they had drumming going and stuff. And I got them all to follow back down the road with the drums going, the whole bit, people dancing. And they came down to the Eric. And we basically had the whole kingdom on the Eric partying that night. I think the police actually showed up at the gate and tell us to be quiet. But, you know, nothing we didn't get in trouble. They just told us to tone down because they could hear us way down the road somewhere. But I remember a couple people coming up to me and going, I have never been that drunk at an SCA event in my life. And we went, yay, our work is done. But everybody had a great time. And yeah, we always tried to find ways to kind of make it fun. I don't know if you were at that event, Kat. Sorry, like children. There was this woman whose phone rang in the middle of court. Oh, it was over in Dragon's Lair. And she's like trying to be quiet. She's like, I can't talk right now. And Uther walks over and goes, excuse me, takes the phone. Hi, who is this? This is your mother. Oh, how are you doing? And he starts just chatting away with her in court. And then he goes, well, I'm going to have her now turn the ringer off on her phone. Okay. So she'll call you later. And he gave her back her phone. He's like, could everyone please turn off their phones?
That's funny.
And the woman was like embarrassed, but he also said, it's okay. But, you know, he just had a little fun with it. And yeah, it was good.
He's very good at that.
Yeah, he's really good at working the crowd. And that's with William of the Battered Helm.
And that's that same, I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, that's the, we called them the Roaring Girl outfits.
So
Wow.
But yeah,
You've taken very good care of that.
I try and take good care of my garb, and yeah, I've been lucky to have some really amazing people help me with some of the garb for me to wear during my reigns and other times. This is one of my super love this dress. Sif, actually, and Ula and her mother helped with putting this one together.
Wow.
I had an earlier Bleo that was cut similarly, and I said, okay, this is how I want it done. And people are always asking, you know, how do you get the sleeves like that? And so I've actually got a couple other ones that I've made that are like it. And you basically have to cut a big giant oval. It's like an egg shape. And then you put the hole up close to the shorter side. So the sleeves, you know, come down to, you know, your wrist, but then it drapes. And when you do it with a drapey fabric, like this is Dupioni silk, it gives you that floaty, you know, really pretty
Ethereal.
look. Yeah. And
Here you go.
this silver is actually cut with purple. In certain light, it turns kind of so purpley.
Oh, nice.
And it originally was made with 14 yards of fabric. I ended up cutting a little bit off the train. It worked well for the coronation because, you know, I rode in on horseback and I had the train draping over the back end of the horse. And then it looked pretty, you know, walking up to the court and everything. But after a while, it was like, okay, I can't constantly it's still got quite a train, and I have to work. You have to look out for trains when you've got them because people will step on you all the time. Oh, and this was my stepping down garb for Baroness of Aquaterra. Eleanor helped put this together, and a team. We had a whole team of us. We'd get together over at Lorenza's house, and we had, we were, I'm trying to remember, Rotary was there, sold, just whoever wanted to drop in, but we were all like hand beating all these little pearls onto the trim. We're, you know, doing all the cutting, and you know, it was up down to the wire. We were all meeting and doing all this work, and it was definitely a team effort, and it turned out really pretty.
How did serving as Baroness compare to your kingdom reigns? Just more intense, or?
Yeah, personally, before I did this, I always swore that there was no way in heck I would ever be a baroness, a land baroness. And then I was asked to please do it, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, fine, run for it. It's different in that it's a 3-year, if you only do one term, commitment. And I mean, there's things almost every weekend, constantly. I mean, I was constantly doing email, constantly, you know, trying to watch out for this, that, and the other thing. I would say personally that it's a bit more labor intensive than even being royalty, just because it lasts for a very long time. You know, at least being, well, it depends. If you win September Crown, you're Prince or Princess for this long stretch, and then you're King and Queen for 6 more months. And that's a long stretch too. I mean, they all are, it's service. And I tell people, if they're really thinking about doing any of it, whether you're going to be King and Queen, Baron, Baroness, anything like that, you have to commit, and it's going to be a big part of your life. And you have to be prepared for that, because you can't just say, well, I'm only working 4 hours a day on this. It doesn't work that way. So you have to love it. You have to, and really you do it for others. You don't do it for yourself. So, you know, you have to just keep remembering that we're here to serve, and that's what you do. Yeah, and that's with Bryson. We were at one of the, I think, baronial. I think that was at a Yule feast.
I don't know how
was
that got in
Gibby and Radnor. That was at a Gulf War. That was another fun time. And that's one of my proteges, Landon. And that was at 12th night. Oh, our last 12th night that we got to go to before things shut down.
Oh,
I think it was that one, yeah. It was in Portland.
So you were a Duchess for a very long time before you were recognized as a Pelican. Do you feel like being recognized as a Pelican changed how you interact in the SCA at all, or?
No, I mean, like I said, it's always been part of my DNA doing service, you know, so, you know, I think I try and I've always tried to help other people, because if you don't help train other people to do the things, who's going to do it when you're gone? but I don't really think I've changed anything about it. I think to me, it was just a recognition of the work I'd done. But it wasn't going to change that I was going to suddenly go, oh, well, now I'm a Pelican. I don't have to do that anymore.
Was
Or,
there a period of adjustment though of figuring out what being that kind of peer meant in comparison to being a Duchess, and how, like, did you go through some steps in your head about how to fill those shoes? Or what kind of Pelican you
Um,
could be?
I think it's more because I had sat in so many Pelican meetings as queen. I already kind of knew what it was. And I do know that my first little bit as a Pelican, I tried to sit back and listen and learn a little bit, because it'd been a little while since I'd been in a meeting, and I just wanted to see how things ran, and and then it was a little while till I took any proteges on. But to me, it's like I only have a couple of proteges, and I really even feel like I don't, well, right now I can't spend time with them that I'd like to, but to me, it's like I just try and help people all along the way that I meet. I mean, I've sat down and helped people out with things, and they're like, then when they find out who I am, if they didn't recognize me or something, they'll go, oh my gosh, I can't believe what, oh, you stopped in my camp and you're doing that. And I'm like, well, of course, if you needed help, I'm going to stop and help, or I'll stop and chat with you or tell you. And I've had people, maybe not even realize who I am. And we just started chatting about the SCA and what's going on and what they think. And then they find out who I am, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're sat down to talk to me. And I'm like, why wouldn't I? But to me, it's like we all should help each other. So yeah, I don't think I had a huge adjustment. I can imagine that if I had never been in meetings, peerage meetings before, or I hadn't been in a high level service position, I might have been different.
Thank you.
And then we already looked at the riderless horse pictures, and I think that's it. So I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, I keep trying to share some pictures on Facebook, as I have an entire bookshelf full of photo albums and boxes of photos, and I want to try and get them organized because they're kind of like all over the place. And I'll continue to try and share those as I can, because I know some of them, I used to run around taking pictures all over the place, or people would give me pictures they'd taken of our reigns or whatever. And I guess, it's part of our history, and it's nice to be able to share it and have it available.
Yeah, it would be
future.
cool to get it up on maybe the Ontier Facebook
Yeah.
page, like have it shared there so that it's like an accessible documentation
Yeah.
of history. That would be super cool.
And I kind of willy-nilly throw up, like I'll run across a pile of certain pictures and I'll go, oh, these are cool. And I'll throw them up, and then the next batch will be from 10 years later or before or whatever. So they're kind of willy-nilly, but once I get them kind of better organized, yeah, I could probably do like folders of, okay, here's 20-year, and here's, our first reign, and here's our second reign. And
that would be super cool.
Yeah.
The West Kingdom has the history site, right?
Oh, yeah.
And Hirsch has things organized that way, by event, there's this event and there's all these pictures. It would be really cool if Ontier could do something like that. I don't have those skills, so I can't volunteer to do it, but anyway.
Yeah.
I was gonna say,
and then you could have numerous people post to the different folders, so it wouldn't just be one person's pictures, but maybe a whole bunch of people have pictures from it.
Absolutely. What were you going to say, Rivka?
I was gonna say Ashley Longbow's been posting up a whole bunch of pictures in the
Yeah.
last couple weeks that have been really cool. And I don't know what the West Kingdom history site does, but we have like all of those media waivers are just such a pain in the butt that I don't even know how you could have an official like history thing on the Ontier website, because you need like model waivers and photographer waivers and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, as a person, I can just post them up because they're my pictures or ones given to me. But yeah, that doesn't make Yeah. And I mean, if somebody ever saw that I posted something and said, could you take that down? I would immediately, you know, but yeah, it's, we have to be so careful with so many things these days. Back in the day, we used to just do whatever. But yeah, fun times. You know, the SCA has been a great experience. All the people I've met, all the places I've been, you know, and you know, there's people. If I were to quit tomorrow, there's so many people that are my friends that I met because of the SCA or in it. We'd still be friends, you know.
Is that what keeps bringing you back? Because you said a couple times that you quit and given away stuff.
I've actually quit a couple of times and said I'm done, and you know, disappeared for a while. But yeah, I always come back because of my friends. And you know, I think sometimes you just need to get a little perspective and get away and take a breath and maybe go do something completely different, and then find the room to put it back in. And then sometimes the politics just becomes so much that you just want to break from it. And you know, when I had a bit of a break, I came back and it was like, I don't even know who's mad at who or what's going on, or, you know, and I don't care.
Why I love visiting other kingdoms, and like I don't have to know. I can just enjoy myself.
Totally.
Right.
Wonderful.
Well, and I think the older I get too, it's like, who cares? You know?
Right.
Well, really, I mean, yeah.
You know, I just try and be encouraging, helpful. And if something starts exploding, I just go the other way.
What do you have any goals for yourself in the SCA walking into the future? And you've done so much.
Oh goodness. I mean,
are you going to get into archery, or do you have any little things?
Oh, well, yeah, actually, speaking of which, I just became started doing archery before we went into lockdown, and I'd been starting to hone those skills. And yeah, Torn of Froghaven took me as his protege for that. So it's like, yeah, we had just started really working on it, and things shut down. So Adriana's now one of his too. So she's kind of poking and going, okay, as soon as things open up, we're going to go shooting. And so, yeah, it's like I try everything. I think everybody should just try a little bit of everything. Some things will stick to the wall. Some you'll go, well, I tried it. That's not really my thing. You know, I've got my armor still. I doubt I'm really going to fight much, but I could if I wanted to. But certainly would be open to doing more equestrian. You know.
Well, do you have a horse now?
I don't, and I haven't for a long time. I've just been lucky that I'll turn up at an event and somebody will go, "Oh, you need a horse? Here, ride mine." And thank goodness, because I grew up on horseback, I can pretty much ride any horse. It's a matter of you need to kind of figure out. Sometimes it's better than other times, but you just have to kind of find your understanding with that horse. And I've been in the finals of the Kingdom Equestrian Championship a number of times. And this isn't even right. I haven't even been practicing. I haven't been on a horse in 6 months, you know, and yet it's something that's just so natural to me. You know, it's like walking. It's jump on the horse and off we go, you know. I've been able to help, you know, people teach their horses how to drive, because that's what I did when I was younger too, drove for both pleasure and roadster. And so
that's super fun, driving carts.
Oh yeah, it's a blast. As a kid, I used to hook up I had a Welsh pony, and I'd hook her up to the cart, and I'd drive up through the woods and up to the housing developments up above where we lived, and I'd charge $1 for a cart ride.
We have a picture up on Facebook of you as a teenager driving your cart, and I almost pulled it because
yeah. Well, and that's, you know, I did the pleasure driving where you have to look like you're in a dress and you look like you're out for a Sunday drive and stuff. And then we also did, my family kind of got into this. We were doing the roadsters, which is where you wear racing silks, and I had this stallion that I drove who was, oh, I got more light, who it automatically comes on. I think they stole my phone too. Or no, I'm on it. So anyway, they were like the little hot rods of the show ring. So what you would do is you had this cart that two-wheeled sulky, and you'd have your racing silks on. And I had this, like I said, the stallion I drove. He was 2 years older than me. I remember, I think I was 17 and he was 19, and we were at a big show up in Canada, and I'd have to have two people holding his head while I got in the cart. And then I'd go, okay, check him up. And they'd check him. And then I'd go, okay, let him go. And he always reared straight up in the air and then took off. And I have to collect him up and get him, under control. And then we go out in the show ring and show. And the announcer always loved telling about how the pony was older than me. But
Very exciting.
but yeah, I mean, but that's not SCA. But anyway, yeah, it's I don't know that, SCA for me is enjoying my friends, going and meeting new friends, seeing the world, through the SCA, and just doing other things too. But you can find a balance where you can do all of it if you want to. I mean, like I said, I haven't even decided what I want to be when I grow up. So, I mean, I've changed careers a couple of times, and I'm starting to think it might be time for another one. So I haven't figured out what it is yet, but.
Very fearless to change.
Oh, there's been times where people are like, I cannot believe you did that. I've traveled on my own in other countries. I've gone off on adventures, and, I think people are like, don't you worry, somebody's going to do this to you or that. And I'm like, no, if you go in and you act like you live there, and people respect that. And I just have never had a problem with it. So, dive in, have fun.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, is there anything that you wanted to talk about tonight that we haven't covered?
Oh goodness, I don't know. We've covered a lot. I don't know. Gosh, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. I just want to say thank you to all the people out there who in the SCA have touched my life and taught me things, and I've been able to hopefully maybe make a little impact in your life, and keep having fun and hang in there. We're going to get out of this and get back together again. And yeah.
So you and Rowena DeManning have pictures in your attic or something, because neither one of you age.
You should see my 86-year-old mother. I just always say, I just hope you have good genes, because, my dad lived to be 93 and was still very active right up pretty to the end. And yeah, I think don't just sit down and retire when you there is no done. Just keep moving, have fun, take care of yourself. I would just say, I always think that if I could tell some young girl what to do someday is don't smoke, always wash your makeup off every night before you go to bed. Those kinds of. What's that?
Don't listen though, because when you're young, you're invincible.
Oh, I know. And we all think we're going to live forever, but my mother's informed me that she's going to live to be 110. So, okay.
Woohoo.
But yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, one of the big things is just keep having fun, enjoy life,
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Your Grace, for agreeing to talk to us and sharing your photos. And I hope you do keep putting photos on Facebook. I know that it's a lot of work, but know that it's really appreciated when you share your photos.
Oh, I know people just always love it, and I get a lot of comments on it, so I'll keep doing that.
Very cool.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about who we have coming up next week real quick.
Okay.
We have Master Richard from Aiden Belt. He's a Laurel Pelican and a Master Defense, and super interesting. So that'll be fun. And then instead of Branch of Laurels on Tuesday, it's going to be on Thursday. And it's not pulling up her name. There we go.
And I am interviewing Eleanor Cleveley, and she is actually not a Laurel yet. She's been on Vigil throughout the whole pandemic.
Oh, wow.
And
Oh.
so there are a lot of people that are in that boat, and I wanted to interview some of them and see what that experience has been like. And you know, they're, in my mind, they're Laurels, and it's a really weird limbo to be in for a year. So that should be really interesting. So that'll be on Thursday instead of Tuesday next week.
And I will just plug real quick, next Friday is the debut of Leveling Up, and I'm going to have Duchess Mari on, and she's going to teach us all about her magic sleeves and draping and patterning and fitting, and she's just such a sewing goddess, and it should be really wonderful. I previewed the video that she shot that we're going to show, and it's amazing. So join us.
Very cool.
And
Cool.
thanks again, Your Grace, and thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you
Thank
both.
you.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.